Hello, and welcome to this week's Career Chat. I'm Shannon Crooks, a Librarian 3 at the Hillcrest Heights branch. And on today's show, we have Jordyn Kimelheim. She's a software developer. She's going to tell us what it's like to be in her career, how she got there, any successes she's had, any struggles, so that maybe you'll be inspired to look into this career if you're looking to change careers, or if you're a teenager, you don't really know what you want to do in life yet, you can consider this as something you want to look into. Okay, so Jordyn, the first question is, what is a software developer and what are your duties?
So basically, software developers write the code that powers software that people might interact with in their everyday life. And that can be anything from people who work at Facebook, they're software developers, but also people who, make apps for your iPhone, those are software developers. People who make Spotify, people who make Netflix, all sorts of, things like that, but also people who make Excel. Basically software is any sort of application that's running on your computer or, device. So that would be different than hardware, which is like the actual like chips and stuff that are inside a computer. So basically I write code, which is sort of like a language basically to tell the, to build the thing. And specifically I work at a company that does Internet of Things. So that would be Internet of Things would be, what Alexa is Internet of Thing, or like a Roomba. And those are basically like devices that you interact with in your life that's different than like logging onto a computer. It's more of like a thing. Specifically, my company works on smart devices for apartment buildings. So locks, thermostats, sensors for things. And I very specifically work with smart locks. So I could actually show you an example of one right here.
Okay, cool.
So I write programs that allow you to use either key cards like this or apps on your phone using Bluetooth to open these locks.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So how long have you been doing that?
I've been in the field for about 2 years.
Oh, wow. Cool. Do you like what you do?
I like it a lot. It's not really the field I expected to be in, but now that I'm here, I really can't imagine doing anything else. It's really just like interesting work. I feel like I learn something new every day.
Wow. Cool. So, Jordyn, what was your educational path from high school to where you are now?
So in college, I studied English and political science. I had no intention to go into tech whatsoever. I wanted to be a writer or do something in like public policy. And after college, I sort of had a number of positions. I worked at a law firm, I did AmeriCorps, and I really was sort of at loose ends with what I really wanted to do. And eventually I got kind of sick of what I was doing. And I was like, what is a dramatic change I can make that is also I can do fairly quickly and inexpensively? And I've always been like vaguely good with computers, like in the way that most millennials are. Like I wasn't incredibly into them, but like I felt confident and like I knew my way around them. And I had heard of this concept of coding boot camps, where basically you go for a couple of months and they sort of teach you the basics. And that really appealed to me because it was sort of like a trade school model almost. Like it felt like I'd be learning a skill. So I sort of took this leap of faith and quit my job and enrolled in something, a boot camp from the New York Code and Design Academy. And there are a lot of these boot camps sort of all over the country. And some of them have like online models, some of them are in person, some of them part-time, some are full-time. For me, I felt like I needed the structure of like a full-time in-person program. So the program I did was 12 weeks long, in person. It was based in Philadelphia, which is where I was living at the time. Despite the name New York Code and Design Academy, they had a lot of locations. I was not in New York. And they taught us mostly they taught us like how to think like a programmer and how to like do some, basically it gave me enough information to then pick up what I needed to learn at the job. And more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, I learned that I really enjoyed the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a really amazing experience. I mean, there's a lot of resources, people who want to learn how to program. For me, that was what I needed, is that sort
Mm-hmm.
of structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I had that 3 months was sort of my only semi-formal education in coding, and I really learned everything else on the job.
Wow. So to get into these coding boot camps, do you have to have any type of degree or qualification?
Nope. I mean, I think some of them have more stringent standards for admission than others. There are definitely some that will have like, entrance exams or things like that. I think for mine, the only requirement was a high school diploma,
Mm-hmm.
which I had, but like I didn't need to have any sort of background in computer science or even like math. Like,
Wow.
the last math class I've taken in my life was freshman year of college. It was like it was one of those like gen ed math class people who like aren't that good at math.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I was pretty much going in with not really a lot of pre-knowledge at all.
Did they pay you to be in the program, or did you have to pay to be
So
there?
I had to pay. So the program I was in had something called an income share agreement. So it was
Mm-hmm.
$15,000, but I didn't have to pay any of it up front.
Okay.
And now that basically now that I'm working, they're taking I pay them 8% of my salary
Mm-hmm.
every month until I pay it off, or the I guess in a couple of years it will expire. What's good
Mm-hmm.
about that is you only have to pay that if you're making a certain amount of money. Like if you're unemployed, you can pause on the payments.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making more than 8% than I did previously. So it's like, even with those payments, I'm still coming out ahead. But I
Okay.
do want to be transparent. I had some family support when I was in the boot camp because I wasn't working at that time.
Okay.
So there were some people in my program who worked on like the weekends and stuff. I was really lucky to not have to be in that position. But for people who are, would have to work while they're in a program like this, there are part-time options, or even just things that are like, kind of online, do at your own pace.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. Um, so, Jordyn, how did you get interested in this profession? I know you started off something totally different.
Yeah.
So, what led you
Well,
to computer programming?
well, I guess there are a couple of things. One is I've always really enjoyed like solving puzzles and like
Mhm.
logic games, like, and I was intrigued by having a career where I could sort of just be solving problems all day.
Mhm.
And I also really wanted to be in a field that was sort of like dynamic and was growing in the way that tech is. I wanted to sort of be doing like new, exciting things.
Mhm.
And I was also really attracted to sort of, a lot of tech companies have a reputation for these very like kind of like relaxed, workplaces, like not a lot of bureaucracy, like no dress code, stuff like that. Like I'm sort of a weirdo. I got all these tattoos. Like I wanted to be in an environment, and like legit, I'm also like a queer person, and I wanted to be an environment where I felt like I could be myself. And
Mhm.
certainly not every tech company is like that. There,
Mhm.
I think we're all aware that there's a lot of issues with misogyny and racism and like all sorts of things in tech, like there is everywhere. But I feel like I was hoping for an environment that I felt safe in, and I think the company I work at is like that.
Mhm.
And I feel like I can thrive there.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
I know a lot of our viewers feel like they don't fit in. Some people who already
Hmm.
are in a career. So this is
Hmm.
awesome that, they can look into maybe software development because they will be accepted,
Hmm.
or they can just be
Yeah.
themselves. I know it's hard to go to work and dress up every single day, but if you can wear casual clothes, it
Hmm.
makes you feel more
Yeah.
comfortable, less nervous. So
Hmm.
that's awesome that you found a place where you fit in and feel comfortable. Um,
Hmm.
that's amazing. And that's very important. That goes to show, the joy you
Hmm.
feel when you go to work. You don't want to feel
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I don't want to go here today.
Yeah. Like,
You feel like you're comfortable, you know, it's easier to go each day.
Yeah, exactly. And then like when you're being sort of your full self, you do a better job, honestly.
Hmm.
Like it actually, I do better work because I feel like empowered to like speak up about things and like I'm not just trying to like float by without anyone noticing me.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jordyn.
Mhm.
So how much time did you invest into getting to where you are? You talked about the boot camp, the
Mhm.
coding boot camp, but what else
Yeah.
did you do?
So the boot camp was 3 months. And then when I finished that, I had an internship for, I guess it was about like at a local software company that was a couple of days a week.
Mhm.
And then I actually didn't finish the internship because then I got hired at my current job. But so really, it was only a couple of months to get hired at my company, but I wasn't hired as a directly as a full-time developer. I was hired to be a support engineer, which is sort of like elevated tech support, like basically responding to like troubleshooting issues from our clients, and then doing like actually going into our databases, going into our code to sort of figure out what was wrong and trying to reconcile it, which was really really good experience because it made me a understand our product like really well
Mhm.
and get like really familiar with like the tools we used and like the way we coded. And so then and I also sort of got to do some get my feet wet with some light software development, like making like little tools that would help us internally, things like that. So
Mhm.
then about after that, I did that was in that role for a year, and then I was promoted to just being a software developer. So I guess in total, if you that year plus the internship plus the boot camp, it would have been like a year and a half.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's pretty quick. Most people don't get their college degree till after 4 years or more, and then
Mhm.
sometimes they have to go for a master's. So the fact that it
Mhm.
took you around a year to be able to get to where you are is amazing. So, you know, if you're thinking of changing careers, this is something that you might want to look
Mhm.
into. You can possibly Google boot camps in the area. And as Jordyn said, if you can't physically go, you can go online so that you can manage
Mhm.
if you have a part-time or a full-time job.
Mhm.
That's amazing. Um,
Yeah, I
Thank you
work
for sharing that.
for like I'm sort of lucky and I work for a company that A is a startup because so things are changing very quickly, but B is a fairly successful startup.
Mhm.
So we're just having a lot of growth, which really allowed me to like have a lot of mobility. So I would definitely, if you're someone who's like a smaller company or a newer company, a lot of times is more willing to take chances on people and like give them a lot of latitude to move up quickly, as
Mhm.
opposed to someplace a little bit more corporate or established, which also has its advantages working in a place like that, in terms of security.
Mhm.
But, for me, it worked out really well that I found a place that was like really growing and like having a pipeline of people who were ready to step up was something that they encourage.
How did you go about looking for a job? Did you just like at school, did they tell you places to apply to, or did you do your own research?
So, where I got a lot of, I guess I have a two-part job hunting story. So with my internship that I had, in Philadelphia, there's where I was living, there's this really big networking event called Net/Work that basically they have every year. Like a lot of local tech companies come out and they're like actively, heavily recruiting. And you
Okay.
can talk to them and like hand in your resume. I know a lot of times job fairs I feel like are a little hit or miss, but
Mm.
this is one that is really good. And Network as an is from this organization that it's like technically Philly, but they also they're in like DC and Baltimore area as well.
Okay.
So there's gonna like so I would definitely look into technically. It's like technical.ly, and they post a lot of like job listings and like helpful stuff. Um, so at this job fair, I met a company. I like gave them my resume, and then they were looking for interns, so they sort of put me in like their slush file, and then they got in contact with me a month or two later, and
Mhm.
I went through their interview process and I got this internship. With my actual job, I actually kind of got it through connections from the boot camp I went to. Um,
Mm.
there was sort of a guy who was like the career coach there who was like in touch with like a lot of local businesses. And this position came up and he like basically passed along my resume and was like, you should go for this. And then I got it from there. So basically my overall advice was like, I didn't really do a lot of direct applying to things. It was sort of connections through the tech community and the boot camp I was in. And like pretty much every metropolitan area is going to have like a good, like DC, Baltimore, are going to have like tech communities with like meetups, which I know is going to be a little different now because of, you know, COVID, but there's still going to be like a lot of resources online to like connect with people in the community. And I think that's probably the best way to like find a job. They always say personal connections is helpful, but especially if you're starting off in the field, if you could like sort of meet people and get in that way, I think that's often more effective than just submitting a resume on like a form and like not knowing what happens to it.
Yes. So viewers, we've talked about this each and every week. Networking is key. So wherever you can network, if you're in some type of educational program or vocational program, you can make connections there. You can make connections in your current position. Maybe your coworkers know someone, or maybe your supervisor. Just start talking to people and you would be surprised on what connections you can make to get connected to your next career path. So thank you for that, Jordyn.
Yeah, can I also mention another thing?
Yeah.
Specifically in tech, there's a big culture of like working on like sort of it's like working on open source projects or doing your own projects and sort of using that as a way to connect with people, which is really cool because it's a way to like prove your skills and get involved. So like there are like probably organizations, since I moved to the area fairly recently, I mostly know about ones in Philadelphia. But there are generally organizations you can find that do things like kind of like hackathons or like we're going to code for some sort of cause for like a little project on a weekend. And you can get involved in those and you can like learn things and like kind of demonstrate what you know. And that's like a really cool way to like get involved.
How do you find out about those projects?
So meetup.com has a lot of stuff like that. And I would go on that technical.ly website. Those are things are sort of in the area, but since so much of this stuff can be done online, I would sort of go beyond that. Like, and just sort of like, I don't necessarily have like a good answer of like how to go find like projects like this, but like, you know, there's so many people on the internet who are like trying things, and you can even just do stuff on your own, like just like, you know, code a little project and then like, you know, post it on GitHub and like see what kind of response you get.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, sometimes we do coding programs for kids. I don't think we've ever done one for adults, but that's something for us to consider.
Yeah, that would be a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Give people some practice on how to make programs.
Yeah, and it's like a portfolio piece.
Yes, awesome. And we haven't talked about portfolio pieces. So when you have your resume, it's a good idea to have a portfolio full of any type of certificates or awards you've gotten, any type of projects you've done, just to show the employer your capabilities to do the job. And that will give you the extra edge to hopefully get hired. So Jordyn, next question is, what kind of obstacles did you face in the pursuit of your profession?
A lot of it was confidence. You know, it was just sort of, I'm someone who likes to be good at things. And when I struggle, I don't like that. And, you know, really like, I definitely remember moments when I was in the boot camp where I was like, wow, like this is so hard. I am never going to get through this. And like, it made me really down on myself. But you sort of just have to keep going through it, especially because software development is a field where you have to be really comfortable with failure, and not just like big failures, like the whole project fell apart, but like every single day I'm trying something new and it never goes right the first time. And you have to be able to deal with that. And that can be, that can be really frustrating. You're like, wow, I'm so bad at this. Like, what am I doing? But that's the process. And that's how you learn, because like, we're trying to talk to a computer and computers do not think the way we do. So, you know, So you really just like being comfortable with that is a skill that I'm still working on that, trips me up a lot, but it's really crucial. And I think it's, a good thing for anyone to learn, regardless of what field you're in, is how to be comfortable with like uncertainty and like not knowing what you're doing.
Wow. We haven't talked about that on our show yet, but that's
Mhm.
very important. Being comfortable with failure. Failing forward is what we say here at PGCMLS,
Mhm.
because you can learn from your failures, and
Mhm.
self-evaluate and reflect and try to get better. So that's with any field. So thank you for bringing that up, Jordyn.
Mhm.
Next question is, what advice do you have for someone wanting to do what you do?
So my, I guess like as if you're like haven't have no experience, there's so many online resources to sort of like learn how to like code and like freecodecamp.com, codeacademy.com. There's just like lots of resources where you can sort of get your hands dirty and start like figuring stuff out.
Mhm,
And if that's something that like you enjoy doing, that would be, I think, a good indication you should go forward with it. And
mhm,
also, kind of, I know for me, I learn best when I'm like kind of have stakes in it. Like, there's some online tutorials that are very much like kind of rote learning. And for me, that like that's great for some people. For me, that's not ideal. I need to like work on a project and
mhm,
really like kind of figure stuff out for myself. So
mhm,
just like think of, little projects you think would be cool, like make a website for yourself, or, make a little script that can like automate this task that is really boring. And
mhm,
like just try that. And you're going to struggle a lot if you're, whether you're new to coding or you've been doing it for a while, just because like it's hard. But
mhm,
kind of figuring out what you want to do and then solving those problems as they come up organically is really, really helpful. Another thing is don't be afraid to Google things. I think
mhm,
there might be sometimes there's a misconception that like if you know how to code, it's like you just memorized how to do it all, and that's not true at all. Professional programmers Google things constantly. there is
mhm,
You do not have all the answers. There is no way you'd have everything in your head. So like that's like highly encouraged is to sort of
mhm.
do your research if you get stuck on something.
Okay.
So like don't be afraid to like use resources and like because
Mhm.
that's what like you would do even if you're the top of your game in the field.
Mm. That's what I always thought too, is that computer programmers is just all in their head. They just type, 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 whatever, write the code. I didn't know that you have to research stuff.
Oh yeah, because there's so much weird like, you know, just like it's a little bit like writing in a lot of ways, not so much
Okay.
like the actual like end result, but like the process of it. And that
Mhm,
you might, in the end of like, if you're writing something and then you have a paragraph at the end, it might take 10 seconds to type a paragraph, but the hard part was thinking of what to be in the paragraph and like
mhm,
revising it and stuff.
mhm,
And like, doing your research if you need research for it. So it's like this little end result was actually a lot of work.
mhm,
And programming is sort of the same way, and that you might have a couple of lines at the end of like an hour, but you really sweated to get those lines.
mhm.
And you might have needed to like, get some outside help to figure out how that should be formulated.
Oh, cool. Thank you for that. So, Jordyn, where have you worked within the industry?
So I had an internship at a company called Brio, which does they're sort of like a just like an agency that works for a lot of different clients, creating like websites and other products. And then I've been working full time at a company called Stratus IoT,
Mhm,
and it's based in Philadelphia. And we specifically do, as I mentioned earlier, enabling smart devices to work in multifamily spaces. Because if you think of things like most of those technologies are designed for like a single home experience.
mhm,
Like if you have a ring lock on your door and like you're the person who lives there and you own it and you can like do everything with it. But if
mhm.
it's an apartment building, there's sort of some different concerns. So yeah, so I've been there for 2 years.
Oh, okay. So
Mhm.
those are the only two positions you've had since you. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so can you compare and contrast different jobs you've had, like the jobs you've mentioned. Can you compare and contrast them?
Those two specifically, I mean, it's a little hard to say because I only was at the internship for about a month.
Okay.
But I guess one big difference is that when I was at that internship, we were working on other people's products as
Mm,
opposed, and now we work on our own line of products. And there's
mhm,
something really nice about kind of having that consistency and like really owning something and having pride in it that I think is maybe a little different if it's like for a client.
mhm.
So
Wow.
that's something that I like. But there's some people who really enjoy sort of an agency style with like, kind of new projects all the time. So
Mhm.
I don't think there's one's better or worse. I think there's different.
Oh, okay. So
Mhm.
when you're working somewhere that has new projects all the time, is it like every month there's a new project, every week?
I mean, I really can't say because like I was only in that kind of environment, so shortly.
Mhm,
I mean, what I can say is working on where I work now, um, we even though we're working on the same sort of suite of products all the time, like, we have one sort of online software thing. We've got like a mobile application, and those
mhm,
are sort of our main product lines.
mhm,
There's still like lots of different projects within that. So
mhm,
even though it's sort of one whole that's the same, I'm still always working on different things within it.
mhm.
So um, I'm definitely never bored.
What's the most favorite project you've ever worked on
So
since
I
you've
don't
been
know
a
if it's
programmer?
my favorite, but sort of the most important is one I'm finishing up right now, which basically, because it's sort of my first like really big project,
Mhm,
integrating with a new type of lock. That's the thing I just showed you.
mhm,
Um, so this was sort of my baby. Like I kind of designed it and,
mhm,
was basically did all the coding for it. So we're actually launching the first property that's using that type of lock and communicating with our system this
mhm,
week. So that's like I'm really nervous about it, but it's like kind of a milestone to be able to like lead something like that,
mhm,
and kind of it be my vision
mhm,
that is happening. So I'm really proud of that.
mhm.
But I'll be
Wow,
prouder once it launches and we
that's
see how that
cool.
actually works.
So does someone come to you and say, "Hey, this lock needs to be this way," and then you just design it, or you just come up with whatever you feel would be appropriate?
So the structure we have is we have someone their role is a product owner, and
Mhm,
basically that's like a non-technical role and that's actually a really cool job if there are people listening to this who want to work in tech but don't want to be like sitting at a computer all day.
mhm,
Where basically they're responsible for sort of figuring out the overall project, like its goals and like what kind of thing we want to produce at the end.
mhm,
And then so I sort of have this like broad sense of like what are the requirements for the project. In our case, it's like you can write a key for this lock, you can return a key for this lock,
mhm,
you can use our mobile app on it. So I have these like broad parameters going in of like what is required and
mhm,
also like what we're going to do but aren't doing yet.
mhm.
So I know what to kind of work on right now. But then the sort of like technical implementation is more up to me,
Okay.
like how we're specifically integrating that into our code base and those sort of design elements. But I'm not like, I wasn't the one who was like, I think this is a great lock. Like I was
Mhm.
sort of, there are people who are making kind of businessy decisions about why we're making these choices.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Wow, that's awesome. So Jordyn, how has your field changed since the face of COVID?
So a big way that it changed is remote work. Um,
Mhm,
luckily, tech is a field that's very easy to convert to being remote. I mean, my company was mostly in person, but there are a lot of companies that already have lots of remote workers. I was sort of an interesting situation is that I had gotten, so the reason I'm living in Maryland right now is I moved in with my partner who lives down here and also works for PGMLS.
okay.
And I got approved to work remotely with like occasionally visiting the office in Philadelphia before
Mhm,
COVID started. And
mhm,
that was supposed to start in June. But then COVID happened. So I kind of just moved down here early. and have been working remotely. And I think a lot of people don't even know I moved because we're all remote.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I think that we're going to see a lot more companies that are remote primarily.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of big companies like Twitter, I believe, have just announced like everyone's working from home until like 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of, in some ways, it's been a big change, but it's also, in some ways, it kind of hasn't, because like I could pretty easily do my job not in an office. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing that's challenging is sometimes we have like weird hardware things you have to like ship to each other, but that's like very specific to like the Internet of Things world.
Okay.
Um, but like, so that's sort of like, I think the biggest thing that's changing is sort of, workplaces figuring out how to, be remote while still like having the communication that we need to, do our work effectively.
Oh, okay. So when you work remotely and you're working, let's say, on the lock,
Mhm.
does it get sent somewhere and then a production team makes a bunch of the locks, or how does that work?
Mhm. So we don't actually make the locks. So this is hardware that's made by like a totally different company. We're
Okay.
basically creating software that will communicate with the lock.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of in two ways. One is that you've probably seen little key cards like this. These
Yeah.
actually have like very, very tiny little computer programs on them.
Wow.
And there are basically, you can use these like readers that will like transfer data from like a software to this. And
Mm-hmm.
then this is going to be communicating with the lock.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we also use Bluetooth to communicate with locks from like a mobile application.
Okay.
So we're coming in with this like lock was already made, and there's already an established way to like write data on these little cards. Like we didn't
Mhm.
invent that.
Okay.
We're basically, instead of, in this case, there was a different software that this company made that you can use to, write these little key cards. What
Mm-hmm.
we're doing is using our software to communicate
Mm-hmm.
with that software that then makes these little key cards.
Wow.
So we're not, the only thing that's really like, basically we have a cloud-based system. So when
Mm-hmm.
something's ready to go, we just like put it on the internet, and
Mm-hmm.
then, people in the real world can use that to then make physical things happen. But we're not making the physical things, if that makes
Oh, okay.
sense.
All right. Cool. Oh, that's very interesting. So how can young people who are still in school, maybe high school or college, find volunteer opportunities to get started in your field?
So yeah, I would look for, I mean, sort of the ultimate volunteer opportunity is just to do your like code something in your house. um, but also I would look for like meetups and things like that, for opportunities to like connect with others in the field. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, the ultimate thing is just to do it. Like there's so much you can learn on your own, and like, you know, and just like do yourself. And there's a big like, that's really, a lot of tech is a field where like kind of just like trying things and doing it yourself is like encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
And like I work with a lot of people who sort of are self-taught, or they went through boot camps or have like non-traditional ways of getting into the field. And that's like very, people aren't gonna like be surprised by that if it's like, I have no educational background in this, but like I was really passionate and I just learned a lot on my own.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of free websites for kids that they can
Mm-hmm.
go on and create games. I
Mm-hmm.
can't, there's one that I've used before, but I can't remember the name of it right now.
Yeah. And there's even like things like, I mean, like I know when this is going to show my age, but when I was like, you know, younger, like MySpace is really big. And like I know
Mhm.
so many people who learn how to like do like front end web design just from like editing their MySpace page. Cause like that was really like real HTML and stuff. So like there are definitely things like that where it's like, like modding a video game you like or whatever that allow you to like be doing real development. It's just like not in like this like very like work kind of context, but just like doing things that are fun for you.
Mhm. There's one,
That is definitely a great way to get into things.
right. There's one
Yeah.
website, I think it's called Scratch or Scratch
Yeah. Yeah.
MIT.com,
Mm-hmm.
where you can create code. I've used it a little bit with some of the kids that have
Mm-hmm.
come into the library, and they really enjoy it. You can make games, music
Mm-hmm.
videos. So
Yeah.
That may be a way for kids to try to get involved early.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Scratch is great for like younger people.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So next question, Jordyn, what are key skills that young people should think about acquiring that apply to all career fields?
I mean, I think that communication skills are really, really important, both like written and verbal. Even like I think the stereotype of like a programmer is like they're just like this like loner sitting at their computer, like just like with their headphones on, like in their hoodie up. But like a lot like the hardest parts of my job are communicating with people.
Mhm,
And but it's also sort of the most important is
mhm,
both like communicating with my fellow developers about like the products we're working on, but also communicating with like other staff, like our support team and like
mhm,
our salespeople and
mhm,
ultimately our end users.
mhm.
So like, and those skills will really, whatever field you get into, like no one likes the person who like writes a bad email. Like
Yeah.
just being able to like, you know, sort of get your point across in
Mhm,
like a way that people can understand and like being able to see their point of view
mhm,
is really important. And that's actually something I find is an advantage as someone with like a non-traditional background in tech. Like I studied English in college, not engineering. And I
mhm,
think I'm probably in a lot of ways better at communicating than people with engineering degrees just because it's been reinforced to me how important communicating clearly is. And like that really helps with things like documentation. Like I know how to like write stuff out that people can understand.
mhm.
So I would really focus on that because it's so crucial to everything.
Yes, communication is a huge one. We've talked about it in several career chats. And then I
Mhm.
also like the fact that you said, you're working with your coworkers, you're working with other people. You have to be able to communicate in a way that is, not harsh, get your point across, be
Mhm.
clear. And so, you talked about having the degree in English. So you transferred those skills over
Mhm.
to your new career. So I think a lot of people think that their skills that they're,
Mhm.
using now in their current position, they can't transfer.
Mhm.
So I'm here to tell you, viewers, take a look at all of your skills, write them down, see where you can transfer them over to a different career or a career
Mhm.
you're looking into going into, because 9 times out of 10, you can probably transfer those skills. Okay, so Jordyn, what uh, resources or recommendations do you have for people who want to pursue a career in your field?
So luckily the entire internet is sort of at your disposal. And we've talked about some websites like like codeacademy.com for learning how to code. If you're ever looking for help with something, Stack Overflow is a must. It's basically a website where people who are working on coding will like, post problems they're having and like, snippet of what they're working on, and people will respond to them with like answers. It is basically anytime you have a problem with like a coding project, just Google like your problem and then Stack Overflow, and you're going to find a result. And it's great because there's just like people in the field helping each other. It's not like, a top down kind of thing.
Mhm,
So that's really important. Um, I think that if you are trying to, starting to apply for jobs or even just like working on personal projects, having a GitHub profile is really great. GitHub is a website where you can sort of using this paradigm called Git, like upload like code that you've worked on, and so people can look at that. And
oh,
that's like
cool.
a really cool thing for like your portfolio, but it's also a really good way just to store your stuff, even if you're not applying for anything.
Mhm.
Just like and have everything kind of saved in the cloud, and you can see previous versions of things. So those are some sort of things I'd recommend.
So,
Um,
so with GitHub, companies come on there and they can just search for different things and
So
see what's
they
there.
could, I mean, sort of more like basically GitHub sort of has like a couple different purposes. One is that you could just sort of personally store your stuff there.
Mhm.
Two is that if you're people, you can access people's projects. If it's like an open source project, you can actually use their code for your
Oh,
own things, or you
wow.
can collaborate with them if it's that type of project.
Mhm.
And also you can sort of link to it as like your portfolio and a job application. It's not super, I don't think that most hiring managers like searching GitHub for people, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's really useful for like kind of those specific purposes as a way to like share your stuff or collaborate with other people.
Oh, cool. That's also another way to network if you're
Hmm.
collaborating with someone on a project.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So what comments do you have about the industry that people just entering it may want to know?
Um, I guess you're going to have a lot more meetings than you'd expect going in.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I said, like communication is like a huge deal. And that I'd also sort of say don't be afraid to ask questions. Like that's how you learn. And like, you know, talking to like, you know, senior developers for like their advice and stuff. Like they're there to help. And
Mm-hmm.
like you're not going to know everything when you're just like entering a junior level job, and that's totally okay. And you don't need to be like ashamed of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, so do you enjoy, I think I've asked this earlier, but do you enjoy what you do now? What is it about it that you enjoy?
I really enjoy it. I love, I just like love solving problems, and I just feel like I get to like solve all these like weird logic problems all day, which is like really fulfilling and fun. And specifically, and I like the process of like designing something and creating it. That's really wonderful to like bring something into the world that started out in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, because in my company we work with physical devices,
Mm-hmm.
that's like a really unique experience, is to like make something happen in the real world based on something you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
One of my like most exciting moments working at Stratus is I went on a business trip in March, right before COVID, to Colorado, to this like really fancy apartment building that has our, you know, uses our products. It's sort of a launch to residents there of our new version of our mobile app.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there and I got to like, you know, A, see it working in like a real environment, which I usually don't get to, and B,
Mm-hmm.
talk to people who use our product and like get their feedback and like see how they liked it. And that felt really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of like, that's like it. Like that's like what what you do everything for, is to then like actually see that like it's making an impact and that it works. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like super, super fulfilling. And like, you know, I could work for a year with like, and then if like super hard, it's like miserable. But then if it ends up in that, it's like it's all worth it.
Hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of times we get, projects at work, we're, putting all our energy and effort in, and we're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, when will we ever get to the end results? And then when we get to the end result, we feel so much joy.
Yeah.
All the hard work we did pays off. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
producing something for a customer or a consumer, to see that they like it and they respond to it is an amazing feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. So, Jordyn, when you
Mm-hmm.
first you think you would be?
I didn't really think I would be here, in the sense that I Internet of Things like did not even occur to me as like a thing I would ever work in. I kind of assumed I would end up just like writing, like making websites or something. I didn't really. I actually work on a lot of like back end code, which is sort of like not so much the stuff you see on like a website, but like the stuff behind it that like powers it and organizes it.
Mhm,
And I didn't really expect to be on that side of things.
mhm,
But I actually really love that. So this wasn't, in some ways, this was a type of job I thought I'd have, but it was also the type of job I really hoped I'd have in terms of like working environment and like, um, you know, like that it's like this startup and, you know, it's very like, you know, relaxed, and I feel really like empowered to work on things and like be myself. And like that was what I was really hoping for.
mhm,
So I got that. So in
mhm,
some ways, like it was maybe not what I was expecting, but what I was looking forward to.
mhm. So viewers, on that note, if you're looking to be in a particular environment where you're accepted, where you're comfortable, where you're confident, as Jordyn has told us, there are places out there like that. Maybe you're not in the particular career field that offers you that right now, but you can explore other career fields. And we're hoping each and every week you will join us to explore different careers, and maybe you will discover a career that you never thought you might want to look into. And with that, the last question is actually for me, Jordyn, and it is, what are some resources that the library offers folks who are new to the job market? Maybe they're changing careers or looking for new work due to the COVID-19 emergency. Well, viewers, you can go to our website at pgcmls.info, go to our online library, and there you will see our jobs and careers section. Once you're there, you can explore Brain Fuse, Career Transitions, and the Learning Express library. You can do a career assessment, you can search for jobs, create a resume, maybe get feedback and interview tips from a live coach on Job Now. Resources are there that are designed to help veterans. If you are a veteran out there looking for employment or workforce development, there's also practice tests for college entrance exams. If you're looking to go to college, maybe citizenship is something you're working on, that's there as well, and so much more. Again, thank you for joining us today, Jordyn. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it. You have a fascinating career, and I enjoyed hearing and learning about it, and I'm sure our viewers did too. So we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah.
And then viewers, you can view Career Chat each and every Wednesday on our website, or you can check out some of our other virtual programs. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again next week. Bye and stay safe.